You know that image we all have in our heads of a ninja, right? These shadowy figures decked out in black, silent assassins moving through the night. They're these absolute legends from movies and anime. But I've always had this nagging question. Were they actually for real?
So I decided I had to find out. I went on a bit of a mission. And where else would you start but Japan, the birthplace of the ninja? My first stop was this place that promised it could teach me the secret arts of the shinobi. I was ready. I was going to become a ninja.
So I get all geared up in the iconic black uniform, and my sensei's first lesson is the walk, the secret ninja walk. It was this very, very specific, almost theatrical way you're supposed to move without making a sound. I'm trying my best to copy him, but, something already felt a little off. And that's when the reality of this situation really hit me. While I'm trying to master this silent step, I look over and one of my classmates is a kid who's maybe 7 years old. And look, it was a ton of fun, but it clearly wasn't the real answer. To find the real ninja, I knew I had to go way deeper into history. Here's the thing you have to understand. Ninjas didn't just pop into existence out of nowhere. They were a product of their time. And that time was feudal Japan, a world with a super rigid social structure. So to find the ninja, we actually have to start by understanding the world of the samurai. Okay, so for centuries, from about the 12th to the 19th, Japanese society was basically this pyramid. At the very top, you had the emperor, who was seen as a godlike figure but didn't have much real power. The person actually running the show was the shogun, the top military commander. Under him were the daimyo, these powerful landowners, and their enforcers, the famous samurai. And then at the bottom, you had pretty much everyone else, the peasants and merchants.
And this power split is so important. The emperor was revered, he was a symbol, but he wasn't making any real decisions. The shogun was the one with the armies, the one calling all the shots, the one truly in charge of the country. That's a crucial distinction.
Now, serving the shogun and the daimyo were the samurai. And they weren't just soldiers, they were a noble class who lived by this incredibly strict code called Bushido. For them, everything was about loyalty, courage, and facing your enemy head-on. It was all about honor. In fact, dishonor was considered far worse than death. Now remember that word, honor. It is the single most important clue in this whole mystery.
So if you look back at that social pyramid, emperor, shogun, daimyo, samurai, peasants, you might notice someone is missing. There's no slot for ninja. So where in the world do they fit into this picture?
Well, this created a really interesting problem. Imagine you're a daimyo. You need to spy on a rival lord or steal some secret documents or maybe quietly get rid of a political enemy. You can't ask your samurai to do that. That's sneaking around, it's deception, it's assassination. All of it is profoundly dishonorable. A true samurai would flat out refuse. So what do? You hire someone who isn't bound by that code, someone from the very bottom of the pyramid who has nothing to lose. A farmer, a merchant, someone for whom survival is more important than a noble's code. You hire them to do your dirty work. And that is what a ninja really was. So let's be crystal clear about this. Ninjas weren't a noble class of warriors. They were essentially spies for hire, freelancers. Common people hired to do the jobs that were considered too unclean for the samurai. And they weren't getting paid in chests of gold either. A lot of the time, a successful mission just meant getting a few bags of rice to feed your family.
Okay, so now that we know who they were, let's get into how they operated. And the very first thing we have to do is just completely toss out that classic image we have from Hollywood.
The all-black suit? Almost entirely a myth. I mean, think about it. If your whole job is to be invisible and gather information, showing up in broad daylight dressed in black pajamas is a terrible plan. You'd stick out like a sore thumb. A ninja's greatest weapon was blending in, so they'd dress like a farmer or a merchant or a priest. That dark kimono was strictly for special occasions, like a mission under the cover of total darkness. But all those strange and exotic weapons? Oh, that part is absolutely real, and it just shows how incredibly clever they were. They used shuriken, throwing stars, but mostly to injure and create a distraction. A lot of their weapons were just modified farm tools, like the kama, which is just a scythe. They had grappling hooks for climbing castle walls, these nasty little spikes called makibishi to injure anyone chasing them, and even these incredible hand and foot claws for climbing. But here's a fun fact for you, a bit of trivia. One of the most famous so-called ninja weapons, thanks entirely to pop culture, the nunchuck. Yeah, believe it or not, ninjas had absolutely nothing to do with them. They just weren't a practical tool for a job that required stealth. So if they weren't a formal warrior class, and you couldn't just go to ninja school, where did they learn all these incredible skills? How exactly was a ninja made?
Right. So you can forget any image of a secret mountain dojo where a mysterious grandmaster trains hundreds of students. The reality was way more secretive, way more personal. There were no official ninja academies. You couldn't just sign up for a class.
The arts of ninjutsu were quite literally a family business. All these skills were passed down from parent to child, from one generation to the next, guarded like a precious family secret. Most of the ninjas we know about from history came from a couple of very specific regions, from clans like the famous Iga and Koga. And the training was unbelievably intense. It started in childhood and it covered everything from combat and stealth to making poisons and explosives. But if they were so effective and such an important part of feudal Japan, where did they all go? Why are there no ninjas running around today? Well, the chain of events that led to their end is actually very clear. For centuries, Japan was a collection of warring states run by daimyo, and this created the perfect market for both samurai and the ninjas they hired. But in the mid-1800s, Japan unified. A single central government took over, and in 1876, the government officially abolished the samurai class.
And just like that, the entire world that created the ninja just disappeared. With no more warring daimyo, there was no more need for honorable samurai. And if you don't need samurai who refuse to do dirty work, you don't need ninjas. Their entire reason for existence vanished. They just became obsolete.
So let's go back to the original question. Were ninjas real? The answer is a clear 100% yes. They were absolutely real. They just weren't the superhumans from our comic books. They were something far more interesting. Real people from the lower rungs of society who developed a unique and secret set of skills just to survive a dangerous world. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The truth about the ninja was hiding there in plain sight the whole time, just buried under centuries of fiction and movies. What other legends that we all take for granted are just waiting for someone to unmask the real story?